Gracias. We have 3 ladies here from Colombia, for example, so I have warned them that I am fully expecting and anticipating and hoping that we will have some input from Colombia. Let's do a quick show of hands to see where people are from. So please, gentleman in the blue shirt, where are you from, sir? Where are you from? Yes. So we've got Dominican Republic. So we've got proper, at this stage, we're not going north of here at the moment. So Marzia, you will hear from later. Marzia is from Italy. We've got Carolina, who is from the UK. England, we should say, England. Where else have we got people from? So starting at the front of the row, where are you from, sir? Mexico. You're Dominican Republic as well. Welcome. Where are you from? Albania. Wonderful. This is great. Where are you from, madam? Dominican Republic. We know where you're from. Where are you from? Chile. Spain. Spain. Next row, where are you from? Puerto Rico. Fantastic. Ladies, where are you from? India. Fantastic. Where are you from, madam? You're Dominican Republic as well. Have we got any other jurisdictions? Yes. Where else? Where are you from? Anywhere different? Okay, Lydia, go on. Where are you from? You know where I'm from. New York. Exactly. Joint national. Anyone else from a different jurisdiction? No. Mexico. We haven't done the panel yet. No, that's true. That's true. So we've got, on the panel, we've got Mexico, India, Albania. We've got Chile, we've got Dominican Republic, we've got India, and we've got New York, which is kind of a state on its own. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to try, and I have warned my colleagues on the panel that I am going to be very strict. So each of them, so Ana Maria is going to start, and she has a little longer because we are delighted to have her as our keynote speaker on this panel. But after Ana Maria has spoken, each of our panelists are going to speak for 5 minutes. And I'm going to be very strict with them so that what we can then do is ensure that we have got some time and space for discussion. I have some questions for the panel up my sleeve, but I'm hoping that we will have questions from you and that we'll be able to have a discussion, because this topic is one which is particularly important in the area of family law. All we need to do is look at the news in the last 24 hours where we have Mr. Simeon in Romania saying overtly that if he is elected, he will simply change the judges on the court, and so that they will do what he presumably would require of them. I won't say anything about what's going on north of here, because I suspect Pam will have comments to make on the rule of law in the US. All of our jurisdictions just now are under threat, and I speak as one from Scotland, but our nation is still part of the UK, where just last week we had a by-election where a candidate from a far-right party was elected. There are challenges throughout the world, and we as family lawyers have there is a requirement on us to, first of all, be officers of the court and stand up for the rule of law in order that we can properly then protect and advise the clients that we are working with. So, I'm going to start with Ana Maria Kudisch. Ana Maria is the president of the Mexican Bar Association. I'm not going to give massive introductions for each of these individuals. Rather than take up time with that, I think you will hear, when you hear them all, quite how spectacular they are as lawyers. But Ana Maria, current president of the Mexican Bar Association, you are going to start with the rule of law and family law from a Mexican perspective. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good day, everybody. I'm going to speak in Spanish. So everybody needs a translation, please. It's the moment to get it. According to what Rachael was saying, in our country, it's also judicial reform, which is completely crazy. Even though El Estado de Derecho está contemplado en nuestro país en la Constitución y las define el Congreso de la Unión y esta semana el Congreso de la Unión, y todos los tratados que están de acuerdo con nuestras leyes también son obligatorios y van a ser ley en todo nuestro país, ¿no? Se contempla también que el Congreso de la Unión se necesitan las 2/3 partes para aprobar las leyes, y el Estado de Derecho es entonces el Estado en el que las autoridades e individuos se rigen por el derecho, y este incorpora los derechos y las libertades fundamentales y es aplicada a instituciones imparciales y existentes que generan certidumbre. En este momento, en mi país, no tenemos la certeza de quiénes van a ser nuestros jueces. La justicia cotidiana se está viendo lastimada porque nuestros jueces van a ser votados el 1 de junio. Muchos de ellos fueron electos a través de una tómbola y no se les eligió como debería de ser por su sabiduría, su experiencia judicial y el saber actuar como jueces. Se ha generado una gran incertidumbre en nuestro país respecto de la aplicación del Estado de Derecho, y esto no se salta al derecho de familia. Entre los elementos necesarios que podemos señalar como una aplicación del Estado de Derecho es justo la división de poderes como base de la distribución del poder en diferentes funciones del Estado y no en una sola institución. Y evidentemente, dado que el Poder Ejecutivo ha decidido destruir el Poder Judicial y generarlo a través del voto, hoy en día en nuestro Estado de Derecho no sabemos qué es lo que va a suceder. Sin embargo, la justicia cotidiana, el derecho de familia, se presenta como una institución de la que no podemos dejar de tener un posicionamiento en la sociedad como parte fundamental de las normas que tenemos para resolver los problemas más comunes y de mayor presencia en los órganos jurisdiccionales. El derecho de familia involucra los problemas más difíciles del derecho. Los intereses que ahí se definen no son económicos, son disputas sobre afectos, sobre la parentalidad y las necesidades que surgen en el seno familiar. Para estos casos no hay respuestas sencillas ni pueden darse soluciones totalizadoras. El juez que se enfrenta a estos conflictos debe ponderar cuidadosamente los intereses en juego y tratar de equilibrar todos estos valores. La familia es el espacio donde se forma el niño, donde adquiere su sentido de identidad y confianza para proyectarse en la sociedad. Es también en el seno familiar donde se generan las relaciones más íntimas, pero no por eso alejadas de la protección del derecho y de los derechos humanos. Por poco, los avances tecnológicos han modificado las formas de progreso que dejan muy por detrás la regulación tradicional de figuras como la filiación. El derecho de familia, como parte del Estado de Derecho, regula las relaciones jurídicas dentro de la familia, protegiendo los derechos y deberes de sus integrantes. La conceptualización del derecho de familia y el Estado de Derecho es la protección de la familia, la igualdad, la no discriminación, respeto a la dignidad humana, el interés superior del niño, derecho a la identidad, derechos fundamentales, el matrimonio y concubinato o unión libre, la filiación y la adopción, la patria potestad y guardia y custodia, divorcio y separación, sanciones por violencia familiar. Según la Declaración Universal de Derechos Humanos de la ONU, la familia es el elemento natural y fundamental de la sociedad y tiene derecho a la protección de la sociedad y del Estado. También la Convención sobre los Derechos del Niño reconoce a la familia como un grupo fundamental de la sociedad y medio natural. Bueno, hola. ¿Ahora sí? That's the bad thing for being the first one. Bien. Ahí voy. Estoy tratando de ser súper breve. Entonces, según la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos de la ONU, la familia es el elemento natural y fundamental de la sociedad y tiene derecho a la protección de la sociedad y del Estado. También la Convención sobre los Derechos del Niño de la ONU reconoce a la familia como grupo fundamental de la sociedad y medio natural para el crecimiento y el bienestar de todos sus miembros, y en particular de los niños, y deben de recibir la protección y asistencia necesarias para poder asumir plenamente sus responsabilidades dentro de la comunidad. En los años 80, México ha transitado hacia el reconocimiento e incorporación del derecho internacional, específicamente hacia el derecho internacional de derechos humanos, tanto con el reconocimiento de la competencia contenciosa de la Corte Interamericana como la suscripción de múltiples tratados. Nosotros tuvimos una reforma constitucional en el año 2011, en donde se consolida el proceso y análisis constitucional sobre los tratados internacionales en materia de derechos humanos. La Constitución ha tenido un impacto significativo en las relaciones familiares, marca el reconocimiento y el desarrollo a nivel internacional del primer asunto como el interés superior del niño, y igualmente habla sobre las leyes de niñas y niños precisamente por su interés superior y los tratados internacionales sobre esta materia. Igualmente, la Convención de los Derechos del Niño abandonó el modelo tutelar para dar paso a la visión del niño o niña como actor social relevante y visible en el espacio público. El interés de la infancia como principio reconocido ha venido a justificar el desarrollo doctrinal y jurisprudencial, fungido como uno de los ejes rectores de las transformaciones al derecho de familia. En el 2014 se incorporó el derecho a la identidad y al registro inmediato después del nacimiento como un derecho necesario para poder ejercer otros derechos e incluso la gratitud en la expedición de la primera acta de nacimiento. Igualmente, el derecho a la identidad ha influido en el desarrollo de la jurisprudencia sobre el derecho de familia. También se ha incorporado la paridad y perspectiva de género en diferentes ámbitos, desde el educativo hasta la representación de cargos públicos. La Constitución igualmente señala que hay igualdad entre varón y mujer, así como el derecho a decidir sobre el número y espaciamiento de los hijos, como parte de la consolidación de los movimientos feministas. Igualmente se estableció la obligación de la protección de la organización y el desarrollo de la familia, incorporando el disfrute a una vivienda digna y decorosa. También se regula en la parte laboral y la seguridad social la prohibición de injerencias arbitrarias y igualmente el derecho de preferencia para los trabajadores que son jefes de familia, hasta la extensión de beneficios médicos y de seguridad social a los miembros de la familia de este trabajador. Incluye el descanso pagado en el periodo inmediato al nacimiento y los recesos para lactancia que fueron previstos en el texto constitucional y reforzados con la obligación de conservar el empleo y los derechos que se hubieran adquiridos con relación al trabajo. Igualmente, se busca incorporar la reinserción familiar como parte de la reforma, introduciendo la estabilidad de la familia como un interés que debe de ser protegido por todo el Estado, y el derecho a la protección de la familia que se reconoció textualmente en la reforma de los derechos humanos, destacando la exposición de motivos que desprende un listado de los derechos que no pueden suspenderse. La Suprema Corte de Justicia de la Nación había emprendido ya el reto de resolver estos conflictos con perspectiva de derechos humanos, primero al reconocer el interés superior del niño como un principio implícito en los derechos de los niños y posteriormente en los modelos de familia que merecen protección constitucional. Hay instrumentos que trastocan profundamente las relaciones familiares y desde hace años se ha comprometido la Suprema Corte con la defensa de los derechos humanos que ha revisado prácticamente a todas las instituciones familiares. La constitucionalización del derecho de familia, podemos sostener que se ha incorporado el derecho internacional, el desarrollo jurisprudencial y se ha impregnado el derecho de la familia en muchísimos derechos humanos. El proceso se ha cuestionado con la base dogmática y los derechos del seno familiar. Nos ha demostrado que el proceso de constitucionalización es más complejo y complicado, porque el derecho de familia se tiene que estudiar ya desde lo constitucional, pero también se debe de saber sobre derecho de familia. La verdad es que cada día nuestra profesión está más especializada. A mí me da gusto porque ya los abogados que quieren ser de todo ya no pueden, eso me da mucho gusto. Y todas las normas que se manejan del derecho de familia en mi país son de orden público, de interés social y por lo tanto tienen aplicación en primerísimo orden antes que cualquier otro ordenamiento legal. Sin embargo, nuestros juzgados están saturados, se manejan 4.500 expedientes nuevos cada mes. Tenemos múltiples juzgados de familia y no se dan abasto. El derecho de familia se ve vulnerado precisamente porque no tenemos audiencias con prontitud. Ustedes, abogados de familia, saben lo que sufre una familia cuando tiene que esperar 6 meses a tener una pensión provisional y a que la familia pueda tener lo que necesita para su supervivencia. Tenemos la publicación de un Código Nacional de Procedimientos Civiles y Familiares, donde se convergen criterios judiciales y legales y donde se dará el Estado de Derecho en materia de familia para que efectivamente sea una realidad en todo mi país. Muchísimas gracias.
Wonderful, and you kept to time beautifully, so very much appreciated. Thank you very, very much. Lots to think about there, and I have very poor Spanish, but the nuances of the importance of us being family lawyers and constitutional lawyers and family lawyers is, I think, a really perfect way to start our discussion today. Our next speaker is Alejandra Precht Rorris. That was Chilean with a Scottish accent, so you will forgive me, or Spanish, Chilean Spanish. Alejandra is one of the judges of the Constitutional Court of Chile, and she has a really interesting route into being here today. She started out being really interested in the law as it relates to children and indigenous children in Chile. She then became promiscuous and went off and became an environmental lawyer, but as a constitutional lawyer finds herself again, now a judge of the Constitutional Court, finds herself again dealing with family law cases. So we're delighted to have you with us, and over to you.
Okay, I will do a presentation about the… Okay, now, yes. ¿Se escucha bien? Okay, perfect. I will talk about the Constitutional Court and family judges, self-restraint, and rule of law. The rule of law provides the support needed for us to live together in a democratic society. I have an administrative law background, and thus I place great importance on institutions. I am convinced that the survival of our democracy largely depends on respecting the rules concerning the separation of power, the limitation of jurisdiction, and compliance with the Constitution and the law. This, of course, applies to all organs of the state, among them the judicial branch, within which family courts are found, and of course to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court in Chile has multiple functions. However, I want to focus in its role of resolving the inapplicability of a legal provision whose application is being considered by ordinary courts when deemed contrary to the constitutions. In these cases, the ordinary judge in Chile faces an irresolvable dilemma, since they lack legal tools to resolve the conflict without directly transgressing the law. And any attempt to do so will be incompatible with the principle of legality. I will introduce two recent cases regarding family laws and the requests in these cases were filed by family judges. Both cases are related to right to identity. In Chile, identity has been recognized in multiple rulings as an implicit right, the right from human dignity. Article 1 of the Constitution states, people are born free and equal in dignity and rights. The first request is a case of biological identity. It's a case from November 2024. The law states that an adoptee can be given copies of the adoption ruling or related document after summoning the adoptive parent. It's the Article 27 of the adoption law, which was being challenged. This case concerned a man over 40 years old whose adoptive parents live in Europe, and he lives in Chile. The judge acknowledged he lacks jurisdiction to interpret the norms since the literal wording is clear, but he faces the dilemma of applying a law that he believes violates the Constitution guaranteed rights such as identity and equality before the law. The Constitutional Court recognized the violation of these rights, and additionally it states in the ruling, the right to investigate and know who one's biological parents are, as well as to learn about the background of the adoption process, are elements of the right to identity. Consequently, state organs must ensure the necessary condition for exercising this right. Furthermore, since the right to identity is an integral part of human dignity, this fundamental principle acts as a negative clause that prevents certain state behavior that violate the core of individual personality. As I just want to say, as in other countries, we have this international adoption and create a lot of problem in this identity, biological identity, then it's important without this kind of ruling, and we have to resolve this problem in the international law. Then will be a problem to resolve for you guys, the family lawyers. The second case is presented as a case of gender identity, but ultimately became a case of access to specialized justice, the family justice. It's a really recent case from April 24 of this year. The constitutional conflict lies in so-called gender identity law, which allows individuals over 40 years old to request the rectification of the registered sex and name before family courts, but exclude minor under 14, such as a 9-year-old girl who prompted the request. The provision only involves a registry change and can later be revoked. It has no connection to medical therapies. It was pointed out that the girl is referred to her female name in school among friends and family, but for any official matter, as going to the doctor, she is called by her male name. The request argued that excluding minor under 14 in this particular case violates constitutional principles such as equality before the law, prohibition of arbitrary discrimination, and the right to identity. However, there was initially no mention of the denial of access to a judge to evaluate the situation. This struck me as odd, since only a family judge has jurisdiction to authorize the rectification of a registered sex. The constitutional judge can only rule on the specific constitutional provision expressly identified in the request, unless after the hearing invoking Article 88 of the Constitutional Court law, the judge asks the parties whether they wish to address a newly identified article. This is what I did. I asked whether they consider access to the family judge guarantee under Article 19, number 3 of the Constitution to have been violated. Ultimately, a majority was reached to uphold the request based on this article, understanding the family judge have the procedure, including interviews, psychological reports, and the expertise to address such a matter. The ruling states, thus, it is not a matter of minor decided independently, nor even via their parents on the change of sex and registered name, but merely to have the access to a court so a judge competent in family matter may weigh the full situation. These cases are example of how the doctrine in Spanish of deferencia razonada protects the rule of law in a way outlining at the beginning of this presentation. The deferencia razonada has two aspects. On one hand, it implies that the public authority owe each other a reciprocal attitude of respect and courtesy. On the other, it requires each organ of the country to recognize and respect the sphere of competence where authorities have the right to make decisions with relative autonomy. There are always benefits if we follow processes in a collaborative matter in which each judge, ordinary and constitutional, limits themselves in order to respect the competence of the other. For a constitutional judge, I have to say there is always a temptation to go beyond the case at hand, since we are, in a sense, the final authority. But we must set aside our personal agendas and remain faithful to the rule of law.
That was fabulous, Alejandra. Thank you very, very much. And again, beautifully timed. So, and I should say, I'm probably giving away secrets here. Alejandra was anxious about whether her English was good enough to do that. Your English was beautiful. So thank you for also doing that for people like me. It's very, very much appreciated. So our next speaker is our speaker from the Dominican Republic. So Dilia, Leticia, Jorge, Mera, I now know. At the weekend, I tried to find Dilia at a restaurant and was saying, yes, her name is George Mera. And I was told there was nobody George Mera there, so Jorge Mera. We are delighted to have you with us. Dilia is one of our, I think you're our only fellow in the Dominican Republic, are you? We've got two fellows in the Dominican Republic. So, and you were our first fellow in the Dominican Republic, were you? Second. I should have done more preparation for this, clearly. So we are delighted to have you with us, and you're going to speak to us about child protection in the Dominican Republic. So over to you.
Muchas gracias, Rachael. Muy buenos días a todos y todas. Good morning to our friends that are visiting from other countries. Welcome to my country, to the Dominican Republic. I hope that you enjoy your stay here. And I am going to speak in Spanish because I have so many friends here and colleagues that I think I need to do it like that. Miren, quiero hablar brevemente sobre el Estado de Derecho con relación al matrimonio infantil en la República Dominicana y a los retos que tenemos pendientes con relación a las uniones de hecho y los embarazos en adolescentes. ¿Cómo logramos eliminar en la República Dominicana el matrimonio infantil? Definitivamente que hemos avanzado. Ratificamos la Convención sobre los Derechos del Niño en 1989, así como otros convenios de protección a niñez y a la infancia. El matrimonio infantil estuvo regulado desde que adoptamos el Código Civil Napoleónico en 1889 y luego otras leyes adjetivas mantuvieron esa posibilidad de que menores de edad se pudieran casar. Los hombres a partir de los 16 años y las chicas a partir de los 15 años de edad, incluso debajo de esa edad con autorización de los tribunales. Y eso fue sembrando en la idea, en el imaginario de la sociedad dominicana, que era normal, que era posible que menores de edad se casaran con hombres adultos, sobre todo niñas, mucho mayores que ellas. Entre el 2001 y 2018, se registraron más de 8,000 matrimonios en los que uno de los contrayentes era menor de edad, en su mayoría niñas. El cambio comenzó en el 2015, con organismos internacionales, sociedad civil, tanto internacional como local, así como también the International Academy of Family Lawyers even sent letters to the Congress para apoyar que fuera eliminado el matrimonio infantil. Esto inició un proceso que no paró hasta que en el año 2021 logramos definitivamente eliminar el matrimonio infantil, marcando un hito histórico en la protección de la niñez. Sin embargo, el cambio cultural es lento y es complejo. Por eso las reformas legales forman parte de esas estrategias que comenzó en este caso en el año 2021. Y hay dos problemas que persisten en la República Dominicana con relación a la niñez, que son las uniones de hecho de chicas, de niñas unidas con hombres de 10 y hasta 30 años mayores y el embarazo en adolescentes. Lamentablemente, la República Dominicana ocupa el primer lugar en América Latina en tasas de embarazos en adolescentes. 77 nacimientos por cada 10.000 adolescentes entre 15 y 19 años. En este contexto, es importante señalar que no existe en la República Dominicana una edad legal para el consentimiento sexual, por lo que cualquier relación sexual entre un adulto y una menor de edad, si hay una diferencia de más de 5 años, se considera abuso sexual y está penalizada por el Código de Niñez y Adolescente. Otro dato alarmante es que en muchos casos de estos embarazos, como ya lo dije, hay una diferencia de edad de hasta 30 años. Estas chicas o estas familias ven estas uniones de hecho como una posibilidad de salir de la pobreza y las chicas también lo ven como una vía de escape de situaciones de violencia que viven en sus casas. Y muchos de estos casos está tipificada también la explotación sexual comercial de niños, niñas y adolescentes cuando se utilizan actividades sexuales a cambio de favores o remuneración. Pero no nos hemos quedado ahí, se está accionando. Hay una política de prevención y atención a las uniones tempranas y embarazos adolescentes que está coordinada por más de 13 instituciones públicas y ha habido un descenso en los embarazos en adolescentes de un 9.5% en el 2023. Eliminar las uniones de hecho y reducir el embarazo en adolescentes nos demuestra que la protección de la niñez no puede limitarse a reformas legales. Requiere acción continua, requiere visibilizar la problemática como lo estamos haciendo aquí en este Congreso. Requiere cambios estructurales en la sociedad, ajustes legislativos constantes y sobre todo la movilización de la sociedad civil en coordinación con organizaciones internacionales y asociaciones jurídicas especializadas en derecho de familia. Y también, ya para finalizar, aquí en este país tenemos que empezar a regular las uniones de hecho. No están reguladas. Entonces, eso es parte también de los cambios que tenemos que comenzar. Así que muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Absolutely brilliant, and I love a bit of data. Data is really, really crucial for what we are doing if we're going to affect change in the area of family law and some of these really thorny problems that we have. We need to start and focus on getting data and making sure that it's being collected and it's being accurately collected and utilised.
Good data, good public policy.
Exactly. So let's come back to that in the questions, because I suspect there will be other perspectives from other jurisdictions here as well. So we're now going to move on to, we're going to move across the globe to Lavanya Regunathan Fischer, who is one of the IAFL fellows from India. Lavanya is one of my favourite people to hear speak, no pressure. Because Lavanya started work, so her promiscuity was not moving from family law and indigenous law into environmental law. Her promiscuity was moving from philosophy to law. Oh, wow. So she always has a really interesting take on things. So over to you, Lavanya. Thank you.
No, thank you. If it falls, then
that's okay.
Thank you. I'm going to try and talk as fast as I possibly can to make the time. If I'm too fast, please stop me. As the father of our constitution, Dr. Ambedkar, observed during the Constituent Assembly debates, when India was excitedly creating a new constitution based on ideas of equality while embracing her multicultural identity, constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. The family law system often escapes the critical scrutiny applied to other branches of law. While issues such as delay, inaccessibility, and procedural opacity are well documented in all domains of law, they are especially damaging in the context of family law. Matters like child custody, violence, women's property rights, and the dissolution of marriage touch upon the most intimate aspects of human life. And yet, paradoxically, the fundamental rule of law principles, non-arbitrariness, equality before the law, and accessible remedies remain inconsistently, if at all applied, and are deeply contested in this domain. India's family law regime is fundamentally pluralistic. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Parsis, Jews, and other communities are governed by separate legal codes, creating a fragmented legal landscape where citizens' rights and obligations vary by religion. Unlike commercial laws, which evolved to meet contemporary demands, family law reform has met persistent resistance. The colonial reticence to understand personal space has in many ways been inherited by the post-colonial Indian state. The call for a uniform civil code, for example, an aim of the constitutional directive principles, which are guiding principles of law, aspire towards equality and a desire for uniform application. However, as jurisprudential evolution has shown us, uniformity is not the key. The international context has proven that uniform approaches do not work as well as local level understanding of what works best for the community. The 2018 Law Commission paper on reform of family law opted for the recommendation that all codes be internally reformed to make them more gender equal. This proposal is attractive, but while it might make it easier to secure consensus, the substance of the Law Commission's paper suggests that much of what it is trying to achieve is, again, identical and uniform. Judicial approaches to family law have not always reflected the Constitution's transformative vision. Early constitutional jurisprudence, including the High Court and the Supreme Court in the 1950s, held that law did not include uncodified personal law, effectively insulating religious customs from fundamental rights scrutiny. While Hindu law has been made more equitable through statutory reform and judicial precedent, these reforms are slower in coming to minority communities where security of identity are often in conflict with the pressing need for reform. In 1983, while talking about reform in a Hindu law case, a High Court judge remarked, rather surprisingly, that the introduction of constitutional law in the home is most inappropriate. It is like introducing a bull in a china shop. In the privacy of the home and married life, neither Article 21 nor Article 14, which deal with equality and the right to life, have any place. Reflecting perhaps a mindset that Justice Rumapal correctly reflected elsewhere, that a patriarchal construction persists of gender-neutral laws. As late as 2023, in the case of Suprio versus Union of India, the Supreme Court articulated expansive constitutional ideals in the context of same-sex marriage, but declined to grant substantive relief, deferring to legislative action. However, all is not doom and gloom. Amongst the ashes of equality rise shining phoenixes of hope, such as the case of Geeta Hariharan, where the mother was recognized as the natural guardian along with the father. In 2003, in the John Valiatum case, where inheritance conditions for Christians were improved. In the Shaira Banu 2017 case, where immediate divorce was held unconstitutional. And then we come to the issue of rural communities as well as semi-urban communities, where panchayats and caste councils wield significant influence. They are often perceived as more accessible and culturally attuned as compared to formal, distant formal courts. Yet their processes frequently lack procedural safeguards, transparency, or alignment with constitutional values, especially when it comes to women's rights and minority protections. But ignoring non-state justice systems will not make them go away. Developing strategies to take advantage of the benefits of these institutions is much more desirable. As Amartya Sen puts it, identity is not destiny. A future-ready legal system needs to harmonize personal law with constitutional morality without erasing diversity. As H.R. Khanna, a courageous Supreme Court judge, put it, the greatest danger to liberty lies in the insidious encroachment of men of zeal, well-meaning but without understanding. I would like to end with quoting C. Rajagopalachari, our first and last Indian Governor General. If we want to cultivate real respect for the law, we must begin, he says at the bottom, in the home.
fantastic. That was absolutely brilliant. And you didn't disappoint me. So thank you. There will be questions. There will be questions about that. So our next speaker, we're now moving again over the globe, and we're very excited to have Albana Boksi, who is a judge of the Supreme Court of Albania. So no pressure on you, but again, you need to give us a little sense of exciting things in Albania, because we all want to come to Tirana in 2 years. And you have got...
We are welcomed.
Well, you have got what I think is the most interesting topic that you're going to cover. You're going to talk about begging and the abuse of minors in the face of parental responsibility. So
yes.
Over to you, Albana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you said, I am a criminal judge in reality, but I think that this topic, begging and abuse of minors, it's when we're talking about the face of in face of parental responsibility, it implies both criminal and family law. So that I choose these topics to share with you some ideas. The issue of child begging and abuse remains a serious concern in many societies. Often we see children that are forced or manipulated into begging on the street, which not only exposes them to exploitation, but also deprives them of basic rights such as education, safety, and dignity. As we discuss this issue, we must ask what is the role of parents and where does responsibility begin and end? And how can, the second question can be, how can society and institutions step in to protect children from being used or neglected? What is the situation in Albania? The Constitution of the Republic of Albania provides that dignity, rights, and freedoms of individuals are the foundation of the states, which has the obligation to respect and protect them. And I focus that. The state has the obligation to respect and protect the children. Then, in another article of our Constitution, is also guarantees the child's rights to protection from exploitation and use for labor, especially under the minimum working age, where such work may harm the health, morals, the life or normal development of the child. I have to stress also that Albania is part of European Convention on Human Rights, and so the jurisprudence of the Court of Human Rights is important. So, the European Court of Human Rights has emphasized that Article 4 of European Convention imposes positive obligations on states parties to make measures to prohibit modern slavery, to protect human beings from slavery, servitude, and forced labor. Again, the European Court and has analyzed the expression forced or compulsory labor by referring to ILO Convention and treats forced labor and begging as forms of trafficking protected under Article 4 of European Convention. Also, we have to say that forced begging under the EU Directive 36/2011 affirms that forced begging qualifies as human trafficking when all elements are forced labor are present. Why I said that? Because in our criminal code in Albania we have two articles. One who said that the trafficking of minors, where they are exploited to work, to force work, it's trafficking in human beings. So it's qualified as trafficking in human beings. In the other hand, we have another article who is abuse of minors. And this article criminalize forcing minors into harmful labor or begging. The offender, in this case, may be even the parent. The sale of minor can thus be committed even by family members, and courts must analyze where such acts constitute trafficking, not just mistreatment or abuse of minors. And this is the important to say, because in our state, the jurisprudence is divided. If forced labor by a parent, forced labor by a child, it qualifies as trafficking or as abuse of minors. Recently, the criminal court, the Chamber of Supreme Court, in its jurisprudence had stated that in any cases where the victim is a minor, the consent given by the minor to engage in prostitution or to perform any other type of source services, including backing or labor, is not taken into consideration and has no legal value for the purpose of qualifying the criminal act as child trafficking, regardless of whether not the child has violated. This conclusion is related to vulnerable condition of minors due to their age and level of development. In various international standards, minors children are considered particularly vulnerable. And so this is important. When parents fail to fulfill their fundamental responsibility, and worse, when they exploit their children for financial gain, yes, it constitutes a grave violation of child's right. Begging, as its core, it's often a manifestation of economic hardship. However, the involvement of children in these activities turns a socio-economic issue into one of moral and legal concerns. Children are highly vulnerable, and their use in begging expose them to various forms of harm, including physical danger, physical trauma, psychological trauma, and exploitation. The use of minors in street to beg is not just a reflection of poverty, but a direct abuse of their fundamental rights to education, health, dignity, and protection. And that's what the Supreme Court in Albania has stressed in this unified decision that I mentioned about. So I'm concluding now. Maybe then we can talk more about questions if you have. Thank you. Time, I think.
And your
and
timing.
Sorry for my English. I go.
Your timing was immaculate, and your English was almost as good as Alejandra's.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next speaker definitely doesn't speak good English because she's from America. So our next speaker is Pam Sloan, who is one of the founding partners of one of the, probably the best known firms in the world. She is a spectacularly good lawyer in New York, and she is somebody who, those of us who are worried outside looking in, we cleave to because we think there are good people in America. So no pressure again. And over to you, Pam, to tell us what's going on with the rule of law in America. And you can have another talk for us in another 3 hours, and then a different one in another 3 hours.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank all of you. Frankly, it's not just I'm from New York, but I'm from Brooklyn, so I can go all like, what, you got a problem with that? You're starting with me? Calling central casting, right? Well, all of you here, how do I say this? I'm stepping back. Rachel didn't have the courage to tell you what I titled my topic, which is the unraveling of the rule of law in the United States of America as it affects families. And I'm going to be very direct. I hope you're not offended by what I've done. But I think I'm talking to you more as a citizen, an educated citizen, than I am talking to you as a lawyer. Because I think, while I do not think that the United States is the most important place on this fantastic planet that's troubled everywhere, the law, I think what's happening is of most interest to citizens and not lawyers. And so I'm going to start on a very basic level, and if you already know this, please forgive me. But any of you who have attended conferences about, where Americans speak about law, the fact is every state has its own law that concerns families. So we have border issues within our own country concerning child custody and division of property and spousal support and child support. We have our own internal statutes that talk about, although it's a uniform statute, it's either accepted or not accepted by each state. There's only one state that hasn't accepted it, but they're a lefty state and they do it anyway, but without having, and that's Massachusetts. So we have a way of deciding border issues or jurisdictional issues between states. It's similar to the Hague Convention. It's called the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act. And we have lots of examples of how crazy it can be to try to be a lawyer or a parent in a family in the United States deciding on certain issues. Forget about what jurisdiction you get divorced in. Let's go to the real problems that I'm going to talk about on the federal level. Let's just say there's an issue in your family that concerns a fundamental right. You have a child who is challenged. Either they're neurodiverse, they might have gender identity issues, they might have something like that. They might have medical issues relating to having their gender identity concerns that have arisen in the family. If parents agree, that's easy, right? They do what they have to do. In the United States of America, and anyone who wants to know it, I'm just proving that I took this very seriously. Hold this, please, Lavanya. I took this very seriously, okay? But there's not enough time, but if you want examples of what, and I'm gonna give you some of the highlights. So, Lavanya, in addition to being a brilliant philosopher, she's very good with the left hand here, okay? So, for example, within the United States, there are some states, if you have a trans child in high school, oh, by the way, the myth, there is no surgery for children in the United States of America. There is no doctor, licensed doctor in the United States who's going to do gender-affirming surgery. Americans are really talking about hormone therapy, but perhaps worse, because, when I say worse, ridiculous, well, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to show my point of view. There are states that govern where your child can pee in the school, okay, literally. Unless you were born a male, you cannot pee in the male bathroom, even though you identify as being male. There are high schools that control that, depending on the state you live in. You can't play on a sports team, perhaps, depending on the state in which you live. So these are important to your child, but if parents agree, I don't want to raise my child this way, they can move across the border and they go to a state where you can play soccer regardless of your birth marker. Okay, that's easy enough. But when it comes to actual medical care, if the parents agree, they can leave the state that, I kid you not, criminalizes not only the parent who obtains the hormone therapy, but the doctor who gives the hormone therapy. This is not every state, and there are maps. I have them with me if you want to talk later, and you can see why parents who agree might say, I'm getting the hell out of this state, and there's a state to which I can go. I've only got 2 minutes. I haven't even gotten to our new pope yet. So, that was a joke, everybody. I don't know if you saw Donald Pope advertising himself with the Pope's mitre. Okay, so there are things you can do about that. But now there is an umbrella of law that's federal law. And federal law doesn't speak to these individual states, but it does speak to basic human rights. So once again, if we're talking about rights that affect families, for example, if you are a parent who is trans, you're about to lose the ability to renew your passport as a trans person. So you will have to go, so if you have a child who has these two parents and you travel, and you might not even know your parent is a trans adult, that parent now has to go back to his or her, or their, as the case may be. I'm still learning this too. But my mistakes are made respectfully, and that's all we can ask of people. So when you get to the federal statute, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. The executive order. We have, like many of you, we have legislature, judiciary, executive, checks and balances. We have laws in the United States of America that were passed by Congress. We have a judiciary that has embraced the laws or have struck the laws down. And we now have a president who is using executive authority, executive rules to change the law and the only way it's supposed to be used is if the president is trying to enforce a law. You're not to use this to change a law. That's what, I know I'm out of time, but let me just do it fast, because I do have, I'm sorry. But, and this is what's going on now. Children are being deported, even though they're American citizens. The government says we're not deporting them. As a family lawyer, what I want to know is, where are the fathers? They became American citizens. They have an American citizen parent. But because the non-citizen mother says, I'm taking my child, off they go. Where's the father? Who's protecting the father? And it goes on and on. I just want to show you the New York Times, 100 days, okay? And here's another one. There have never been 100 days like this. And I suppose I stand here now as a citizen to tell you, many citizens really do care. They really do care. And I'm sorry I went over. I'm not exactly on point, but if you want to talk about these other things, please find me. I'm happy to discuss them with you. But I promise you, not every American wants this to be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I am just impressed that you were able to do that in the time that you were, because I can imagine it's a where do you start when you are dealing with this on a day-to-day level, when you are trying to look after the people who are affected by this, when that is not your legal history.
Well, I just very quickly, I want to say that in fact, you're going to hear from my partner Lydia as well. We're divorce lawyers. These issues don't affect us on a daily basis. That's why I say I come to you as a citizen who cares. And I promise you most of our citizens do care. Because these issues affect you only if it's your family who's being deported, or your family whose child or the parent in that family doesn't have what you have. But thank you for giving me some leeway here. I appreciate it.
And I suppose it's potentially relevant beyond that if you end up with a situation where your government is not respecting the orders handed down by the courts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that I think brings us nicely to our last panelist, the brave man on the panel. So we are delighted to have Ravi here. Ravi is the country head for the Access to Justice programme in India, and he is the co-founder of, now how do you say, Shakti, you're the charity that you're the
Just Rights for Children.
Yeah, thank you. So we will hand over to you now. So, and you're going to, let me just move my thing here. Not able to. You are going to speak to us about child trafficking, I think.
No, child marriage.
Child marriage, apologies. Over to you, Ravi, thank you.
So yes, it's a common saying that a nation is judged by how it treats its children. This reflects the country's moral, social, and legal character through its commitment to protecting and nurturing the youngest citizens. A country's rule of law is reflected by what and how children are treated by laws, codes, and treaties. It is also imperative that for a real sense of rule of law, how accountable are the institutional mechanisms and justice delivery systems. Crime against children should be addressed by robust legal systems and should be fast and swift to ensure that children get a sense of justice. Today, I want to speak about Just Rights for Children initiated model, Project Access to Justice, which combats crime against children in the three thematic areas of child marriage, child sex abuse, and child trafficking, child marriage. A majority of these crimes happen within the homes of these families. A mother selling a child for adoption, a 12-year-old child getting married under social pressure and acceptability, and a child abused sexually within the four walls of the home are all happening in the family environment. At Just Rights for Children, which in India is an alliance of 300 plus organizations working in 427 districts in the country. It is world's biggest child protection program which is running there. In 23-25, we supported 300,000 plus children, out of which 85,465 children were rescued from trafficking situations. 54,000 cases of prosecutions were launched, and 330,496 child marriages were stopped. At Just Rights for Children, we use the Picket framework, which involves policy, investments, capacity building, knowledge, education, and the use of technology. We strongly believe that if we can bring in strict implementation and certainty of punishment, it creates a deterrence. We are also using the strategic litigation as a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court of India, and we have come up with 30 plus successful judgments in which on child protection. The latest one is on child marriage, where the Supreme Court has laid down a roadmap of eradicating the child marriage. At Just Right of Children, we are wanting to end the tipping point, achieve the tipping point on child marriages by 2027 and end child marriages by 2030. For your kind attention, South Asia has 45% of the world's child marriages. And if we can do it in India, if we can solve the problem in India, almost half of the world's child marriage situation will be eradicated. So we are using all this by scaling. In the districts, we are scaling because India is a huge country, and we have scaled it to the district level. We have created an ecosystem approach where we have strengthened the law enforcement mechanism, the law enforcement agencies, the child protection agencies, the judicial services, the legal services. We are bringing in a convergence of all these agencies to work in a convergent action so that children get a sense of justice. We strongly believe that for behavior change, the rule of law and the implementation of law is important. If we can bring in the fear of certainty of punishment, that creates a big deterrence. Apart from the work we have been doing on the legal side of it, in India, there's a huge momentum of women and children joining, millions of women and children joining in hundreds and thousands of villages on ending child marriages. Just Rights for Children internationally, as well as Just Rights for Children India, is committed to end child marriages by 2030. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Ravi. And you, I think, are possibly the first person who didn't need the 2-minute reminder. So beautifully, beautifully done. So what that means is that we now have some space for questions. So as I say, I have a few questions up my sleeve, but I don't want to take up time if there are thoughts or observations or questions that any of you have for the panel, or indeed that the panel have for other members of the panel. So any questions or thoughts from your own perspective before we look at some of the questions I've got? Yes. Do you need a microphone? Okay. Oh, we do need a microphone. Wait a minute. Come. Come. Wait a minute. Here we are.
Sí. Ok. Me avisan, por favor. La dama Jorge Mera, ella trataba el tema del matrimonio infantil. Desde el punto de vista de Abel Sierra, que soy yo, como abogado, hay un tema que yo pensé que se iba a tocar en la Constitución Dominicana, respecto al matrimonio con menores, porque nunca ha existido matrimonio infantil, siempre ha sido con menores, y es el tema de que el artículo 21, creo que reconoce la ciudadanía, contempla el matrimonio con menores. ¿Por qué? Este contempla que se adquiere la ciudadanía cuando tú adquieres 18 años de edad o si se casa un niño o un menor con un adulto. Eso va a traer un conflicto constitucional que a la larga el tribunal va a declarar inconstitucional la ley que anula el matrimonio infantil. Cuando yo leo la Constitución de 2023, 24. Digo, bueno, pues quizá en esta constitución van a tocar este tema. Veo que no le pusieron ni asunto, la dejan de lado. Respecto a lo que planteaba, vamos a ver, la primera exponente, la dama aquí, el derecho de familia en nuestra constitución está consagrado muy abierto. Lo permea en muchos artículos. Por ejemplo, el artículo 55 es un espacio diseñado completo al derecho de familia, pero si vamos al artículo 39, habla de la dignidad humana, que también permea el derecho de familia. El artículo 38 habla del derecho a la vida. Y artículo 44, derecho a la libertad, que también trabaja eso. Entonces, yo entiendo que nuestra constitución, que fue promulgada 26 de enero de 2010, los juristas que la trabajaron, sí trabajaron pensando en un derecho moderno, en una constitución moderna, porque esta solo tiene algunas cositas que se pueden trabajar, pero creo que esta está diseñada para proteger el derecho de la persona, como muchos le dicen, el derecho fundamental. Es un aporte solamente lo mismo.
Thank you so much. Delia.
Muchas gracias por tu comentario. Tú sabes, simplemente para decirte que efectivamente la Constitución habla acerca de obtener la ciudadanía, menciona el tema del matrimonio de menores de edad. Y es un caso que posiblemente llegue al Tribunal Constitucional y ahí va a haber un conflicto de derechos fundamentales. Y el Tribunal Constitucional empezará a sentar jurisprudencia y decidirá, yo contrario a ti, entiendo que no va a eliminar o sea, que va a mantener la prohibición del matrimonio infantil porque está por encima del interés superior del niño y se están violentando muchísimos derechos fundamentales, sobre todo a las niñas que son, que se casan o se pasan en esas situaciones de matrimonio infantil. Pero ya lo veremos, ojalá llegue. Gracias.
Ana María, would you like to comment on that?
Bueno, en México también está prohibido el matrimonio infantil. También nosotros lo pudimos establecer hace muy poquito tiempo, también hace 3, 4 años, pero sí hemos sido tajantes. Nadie puede casarse antes de los 18, no hay manera. Entonces, creo que nuestra legislación es bastante estricta en ese sentido y no hay un juez del registro civil hoy en día que los case. Sin embargo, las relaciones de hecho en la materia de familia ya sabemos que son inevitables, ¿no? Y no necesariamente en poblaciones indígenas, que pues es lo que también tienen ustedes mucho parecido a nosotros, sino también por cuestiones religiosas, ¿no? O sea, los judíos, por ejemplo, tienden mucho también a casar a sus hijas siendo menores de edad y hasta dote dan y todas estas cosas. Y bueno, pues las relaciones de hecho en la materia de familia son las que vienen a lastimar más y es donde tenemos más situaciones de los abogados que nos generan trabajo, gracias a Dios, pero eso no quiere decir que esté bien.
Any other questions from the floor? Does anybody else, are you from a jurisdiction where child marriage, child and early forced marriage is an issue or something that you're grappling with or something that you're finding yourselves deal with? Maybe, but you're not admitting to it. I understand. Pam. And I think, yeah, America is particularly interesting on this.
Yes, I was not shopping when I was on here. I was not, but I just, because this is not something that's in the forefront of my head right now, but there are states in the United States of America that have underage marriage. There's a recent federal statute with an attempt to control it, but it's a shocking number. I'll just read it very quickly. There are, once again, and this is our state-by-state issue, only 13 states have a minimum age for marriage. In 37 states, child marriage is legal. That means below the age of 18. 4 states do not require any minimum age, and that includes, of all places, California. Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Mississippi. I'm not making any jokes about any of these states deliberately. And there is currently no wage floor, and this is interesting to me, given the panel and all your brilliant minds and all of yours as well. There is currently no wage floor beneath which a person cannot be awarded a marriage-based immigration visa to the United States. And it's like a dirty little secret that we don't talk about.
It's really interesting. As an organisation, the IFL, this is something that we've been doing a lot of work on increasingly, and we had a really interesting webinar, I think in January, very beginning of the year, which was particularly focused on the US, and it was incredibly well attended by people throughout the world, but in very large part by people from the US. And it was held in Maryland, and the fellow from the IFL, a woman called Cheryl Hepfer, who's an astonishing creature. She's what we would call a pocket rocket. She's wee, but she's mighty. And she's a former president of the IFL, and she has been very much leading on this work. This is work that is very close to her heart. And I got a message from her about 2 weeks ago to say that Maryland has just introduced a minimum age for forced marriage, for child and early forced marriage, to 18. She thinks, as a consequence of her work, I think she's probably right. I think she probably broke them, and they decided it was easier to give in and do as they were told, because any of you who've dealt with her know that when she tells you to do something, you just do it. But there are real challenges around child and early forced marriage at the moment, and as you say, Dilia, there are thorny constitutional issues there in terms of competing rights. Albania, Albana, what happens in Albania? Do you have a sort of a minimum age for... Ravi, could you? Yes.
Okay. Yes, in Albania we don't permit the marriage under the 18 years, but we have an exception, let's say. By customs, generally girls under the 18 age can be married not legally, let's say. And then when they have to go to take a special permit by the court, and the court can give this special, let's say, permit to be married to a girl under the age of 18 with special conditions, like if they are pregnant, for example. This is the only case that court can give this permission. But by law, it's not permitted. But by, let's say, custom, yes, generally they do marriage under the age, unfortunately. Yeah, but not legally,
Yeah.
not going.
Yeah. No, that's traditional marriage, yeah. So, Chile. Ravi, do you want to give it? Yeah, perfect.
I want to talk about another issue that you were talking about, and I want to point out, in my country, I know that here no, but we have an important indigenous community. I don't want to talk about marriage. I want to talk about labor, and I will switch maybe to Spanish now, okay? Okay, and hubo un caso en los tribunales en el sur de Chile con una comunidad indígena mapuche y que una niña trabajaba después de la escuela, y fue tomada por los policías y llevada a los servicios de infancia, etcétera, y se hizo un juicio en contra de la familia. Y este juez, de una manera yo creo correcta y muy sensitiva, miró la realidad indígena y dijo, esta es una niña que fue terrible para la niña porque la sacaron de la familia, la tomó la policía, o sea, vivió un montón de violencia porque ella estaba parada con su carrito a la salida del mercado, como hacen muchos mapuches en Temuco, vendiendo algunos productos agrícolas. Y el juez miró a la niña y miró a la familia, dijo, esta es una niña que es cuidada por su padre, por su madre, que va al colegio, que en la costumbre indígena es muy común hacer comercio y que ella comercia sin dejar la escuela, siendo una buena alumna, siendo una hija querida por sus papás, para comprar, ella decía, sus artículos del colegio, el estuche, los lápices, etc. Entonces, yo solo quiero, es distinto el caso que estamos hablando de matrimonio, porque creo que hay una base, ¿no es verdad? Hay un mínimo común. Pero a veces, buscando estos mínimos comunes, nos olvidamos de que hay realidades muy distintas y hacer el mundo como que fuéramos todos iguales, que es verdad, somos iguales en dignidad, pero no somos iguales en cultura y tenemos que tener cuidado en estos casos. Es un caso distinto, pero en el caso ambiental hay muchas comunidades que por conservar las áreas, ¿no es verdad? Y muchas ONG internacionales vienen a nuestros países, para conservar las áreas, y es algo muy importante, ¿no es verdad?, la conservación del patrimonio ambiental, pero eso hace que comunidades que han vivido en esas áreas, que son terrenos fiscales, tengan que dejar sus formas habituales. Ellos no han producido ni la contaminación ni ningún tipo de problema. Yo solo quisiera siempre que no nos olvidemos que estas normas son hechas, un poco como habla Pam también, de mirar quiénes son los afectados y tenemos que resguardar nuestra diversidad cultural. Entonces quisiera poner ese caso de una ley laboral que fue respetada en el contexto de una comunidad indígena.
And as though we had planned it, but we didn't, I think that's the perfect way to finish this panel, because you have summed up beautifully there the real challenges that we have as family lawyers in a constitutional sense, where, as Lavanya said, uniformity is not the answer. It is about us being respectful. It's about us remembering that it's remembering the significance, it's always Pam, human dignity, and being respectful of our different cultural traditions, our different heritage, our legal systems, and trying to find our way through that when we are all grappling with a world that is becoming increasingly complex, moving faster and faster, where there is both more globalization and more isolationism at the same time. And that brings huge challenges. And for us as family lawyers, we're on the front line of that because those challenges are affecting the individuals that we're working with day in, day out. So thank you all. This panel has been superstar panel. You were absolutely brilliant.
Well, somebody has to do it, so it might as well be Sloan. The superstar is you, Rachael, who is the leader of our organization, and she has led us in a direction that very few before have been willing to lead in. And so we thank you very, very much. And next time in Nairobi.
So thank you all. I think, are we segueing straight into this, or we've got a 10-minute break, a 5-minute break, have we? So 5-minute break for those of you who are going wherever you're going, and then we're back on for the next family panel. Oh, and a picture of the, oh yes, you don't need to know that, sorry. Thank you all, thank you.